A queen walked into Westminster Hall in 1820, knowing the entire British establishment wanted her dead, and she refused to disappear quietly. I've read the court records myself. What strikes you first isn't the scandal, it's the precision of the cruelty. By 1819, King George Roman IV had decided his wife, Caroline of Brunswick, was an embarrassment, not because she'd betrayed him, because she'd simply lived. Their marriage had been a transaction from the start, 1795, arranged between two German cousins to satisfy dynastic need. George got a wife. Caroline got the title. What she didn't get was anything resembling affection. On their wedding night, George was so drunk he passed out in the fireplace. That set the tone for everything that followed. By 1806, Caroline had given George one son, the heir, and that was all he needed from her. She was exiled to a cottage. George took a mistress, then another, then lost count. Caroline, meanwhile, did something that terrified the royal family far more than infidelity ever could. She became popular. She traveled. She spoke her mind. She adopted an orphan. Common people saw her as genuine in a way the royal court never was. The establishment watched this with mounting dread. A popular queen was a threat to absolute power, and George knew it. January 1817. George's father, King George Roman III, finally died. The son became king, and with that crown came an urgent problem: Caroline. He couldn't divorce her quietly, she was too famous now. Any public proceeding would turn into a circus, but he also couldn't keep her as queen, so he did something calculated. He offered her money to disappear. Caroline refused. She'd done nothing wrong, at least nothing that mattered in her mind. She wanted her title. She wanted to be queen, and she wanted the world to know why her husband was trying to erase her. That's when George made his fatal miscalculation. He decided to destroy her through the law. April 1820. The Bill of Pains and Penalties was introduced in Parliament. Understand what that meant. It was a divorce bill specifically designed to strip Caroline of her title and her rights as queen. But here's what George didn't anticipate. The public would find out exactly what evidence he planned to use against her. The accusations were explosive: adultery, multiple lovers, illegitimate children. Caroline's advisors urged her to settle, to take the money and vanish to the continent. She refused. None of it was provable, she said. All of it was hearsay, and she would fight it in court publicly in front of God and everyone. June 17, 1820. Caroline arrived at Westminster Hall. I've seen the accounts. Thousands of people lined the streets. Supporters, enemies, the curious. She wore a black dress and a veil. When she stepped from her carriage, the crowd erupted. This wasn't just a trial, it was a reckoning. For 2 months the trial consumed Britain. Witnesses testified. Some claimed she'd had affairs across Europe. Others said they'd seen her with men in compromising positions. But when Caroline took the stand herself, something shifted. She was articulate. She was calm. She was dignified. She didn't deny everything. She admitted to indiscretions, to loneliness, to the desperation of a woman abandoned by her husband. But she reframed it. I have erred, she said, but I have not been unfaithful. The distinction was subtle but powerful. She'd been human in her pain. George had been cruel in his calculation. The vote came in November. The bill passed the House of Lords, but barely. It was so narrow, so contested, that George's own ministers advised him to drop it. Pushing forward would be political suicide. He'd spent a fortune. He'd exposed himself, and he'd failed to destroy her. In January 1821, the bill was withdrawn. George had lost. Caroline hadn't won, not exactly, but she'd survived. She kept her title. She kept her dignity. And she'd proven that even a king couldn't simply erase a woman the people had decided to believe in. But here's what the history books often gloss over. The trial had broken her. The stress, the scrutiny, the legal warfare, it had taken everything she had. Caroline died less than a year later, in August 1821. She was only 53. George outlived her by 9 years. And in those years he got what he wanted all along: a wife who couldn't contradict him, couldn't embarrass him, couldn't threaten his authority. She was gone. The problem was solved. But it wasn't a solution anyone could celebrate. The Caroline affair did something unexpected, though. It cracked the facade of royal invincibility. The public had sided with a woman against a king. And that precedent, that ordinary people could question royal authority and win, it would echo through the rest of the 19th century. Every reform, every challenge to monarchy that followed, traced a line back to 1820. Caroline of Brunswick didn't change the law. She didn't overthrow the system, but she exposed it. She showed that even the most powerful men in Britain could be forced to answer for their actions if enough people were watching. And in a monarchy built on the myth of absolute authority, that exposure was revolutionary. Subscribe for the stories of royal power turned against itself. Every week, a new scandal the establishment tried to bury.